and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Latvia and Slovenia have joined the rapidly expanding list of countries that have suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. The World Health Organization says there is no evidence of a link between the vaccine and blood clots. Pakistan has registered over 2,500 infections and 58 fatalities overnight, with the death toll approaching 13,600. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.6 million lives and infected more than 120 million people. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington will continue to work with allies towards the denuclearization of North Korea. It comes after North Korea threatened to scrap inter-Korean cooperation as it condemned the U.S.-South Korea military drills. The sister of North Korean leader Kim Yo-jong cautioned Washington against causing a stink if it wants peace. A U.S. watchdog on Washington has warned that further aid cuts can imperil the war-torn country. In an interview, U.S. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, John Sopko said the slashes by the U.S. and other donors can cause the government to collapse and return the country to chaos. At least 5 rockets have hit an Iraqi military base housing U.S. troops in north of Baghdad. The Iraqi military says 2 more rockets fell outside the Balad air base and caused damage to a civilian house. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The Arab coalition says it has intercepted another Houthi drone targeting Saudi Arabia's Khamis Mushat city. A coalition spokesperson says they are taking operational measures to protect civilians from extremist attacks. Earlier, 2 Houthi ballistic missiles hit the uninhabited border areas of the same city. And in football, Lionel Messi's brace has helped Barcelona thrash Huesca 4-1 in their Spanish La Liga face-off. The Argentine star also equaled Xavi Alonso's record for most Barcelona appearances with his 767th game. The win moves Barca back in second place, 4 points behind leaders Atletico Madrid. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the news in detail. Latvia and Slovenia have joined the rapidly expanding list of countries that has suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. The World Health Organization says there is no evidence of a link between the vaccine and blood clots. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.6 million lives and infected more than 120 million people. More on the pandemic in this report.
The focus of government seems to be shifting to only one vaccine, AstraZeneca, at the moment, as they appear divided over its usage against COVID-19. The WHO has urged the countries to continue using AstraZeneca, while it has scheduled a meeting of experts to discuss the vaccine's safety today. Canadian health experts say all COVID-19 vaccines being administered in the country are safe, including those made by AstraZeneca. The Oxford vaccine is one of the few that the Brazilian health regulatory agency, Anvisa, has so far approved. But Venezuela says it will not authorize AstraZeneca vaccine, citing unspecified effects on patients. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to be enthusiastic about the inoculation drive.
Over the next 10 days, we will reach 2 goals, 2 giant goals. The first is 100 million shots in people's arms will have been completed within the next 10 days, and 100 million checks in people's pockets in the next 100 days.
Major European nations, including Italy, Germany, and France, have also suspended the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine. European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control data shows the bloc has nearly 8 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine sitting unused. The European Medicines Agency has echoed the WHO's calls for calm and says it is better to get the Oxford vaccine than not. Meanwhile, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas has tested positive for COVID-19. In France, hospitals and intensive care units face mounting stress due to the pandemic.
Disponible en réanimation, ce qui n'est pas...
Every day we have 1 or 2 beds available in intensive care, which isn't a lot. Today we have 34 patients hospitalized in intensive care because of COVID, among the total of 73 beds available. So that means that we have a lot of patients that are here for other diseases. So if necessary, we can postpone surgeries or medical treatments other than COVID.
Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-ocha has become the country's first person to be inoculated with the AstraZeneca vaccine after the rollout was temporarily put on hold over safety concerns. Australia says it has no plans to halt the use of the Oxford vaccine. Meanwhile, for the 6th straight day, India has reported more than 20,000 cases overnight.
In Pakistan, another 58 people have died from COVID-19 and over 2,500 tested positive for the virus overnight. The Health Ministry says the countrywide death toll is approaching 13,600. Pakistan's caseload has crossed 607,000, of which more than 571,000 people have recovered. The ministry says the number of active cases in the country has topped 23,000 and nearly 2,400 people are admitted to hospitals across the country. Meanwhile, the government has started walk-in COVID-19 vaccinations for citizens aged 70 and above. The U.S. says it will continue to work with allies towards the denuclearization of North Korea. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said this in a meeting with his Japanese counterpart Toshimitsu Motegi in Tokyo. White House spokesperson Jen Psaki also said Washington has reached out to North Korea but has not received a response. Talking to reporters, Psaki said Pyongyang has rebuffed U.S. calls for dialogues. Meanwhile, North Korea threatened to scrap inter-Korean cooperation as it condemned the U.S.-South Korea military drills. The sister of North Korean leader Kim Yo-jong warned Washington against causing a stink if it wants peace. She said they warned the new U.S. administration, which is trying hard to give off powder smell in their land. A U.S. watchdog on Washington has warned that further aid cuts can imperil the war-torn country. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction says the slashes by the U.S. and other donors can cause the government to collapse. In an interview, John Sopko said any such move would return Afghanistan to chaos. He said 80% of Afghanistan's budget is funded by the U.S. and other international donors. Sopko said even the Taliban recognize they really need foreign support. He added the World Bank found if the peace pact is reached, Afghanistan will need $5.2 billion in aid through 2024. In Kabul, U.S. Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has briefed Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on the latest developments in the peace process. Khalilzad also met Afghan High Peace Council Chairman Abdullah Abdullah and reiterated the call to accelerate the peace efforts. The visit comes the day after meeting the Taliban negotiators in Doha. The U.S. has unveiled a draft peace plan for Afghanistan ahead of the May 1st deadline for the withdrawal of foreign troops. The formation of an inclusive interim setup and a UN-led conference in Istanbul next month are part of the plan. Russia has also invited the U.S. and regional countries, including Pakistan, to this week's talk in Moscow. At least 5 rockets have hit an Iraqi military base housing U.S. troops in north of Baghdad. The Iraqi military says 2 more rockets fell outside the Balad Air Base and caused damage to a civilian house. The military said the attack caused no casualties on ground. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Earlier this month, the U.S. said it will defend its interests at all costs after a rocket attack on Iraq's Ain al-Sada Air Base. At least 10 rockets were fired at the base in Anbar province that left a U.S. contractor dead due to a cardiac arrest. U.S. forces retaliated by carrying out airstrikes against facilities at a border control point in Syria used by pro-Iran militias. The Arab coalition says it has intercepted another Houthi drone targeting Saudi Arabia's Khamis Mushat city. Earlier, 2 Houthi ballistic missiles hit the uninhabited border areas of the same city. A coalition spokesperson says they have destroyed a bunker for ballistic missiles and launch pads in the northern Yemeni province of Sada. He said they are taking operational measures to protect civilians from extremist attacks. Meanwhile, a Houthi spokesperson said they also fired drones at the King Khalid Air Base in Khamis Mushat in southern Saudi Arabia. Houthi attacks into Saudi Arabia have escalated in recent weeks. In Myanmar, protesters and families of the 20 demonstrators killed by police overnight will hold their funerals today. The supporters of detained leader Aung San Suu Kyi have shown no signs of backing down in the face of growing violence. In a statement, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said Secretary General Antonio Guterres is appalled by the escalating violence. Guterres called on the international community to help end the repression by Myanmar's military. U.S. State Department spokesperson Jalina Porter has also termed the violence by the coup leaders immoral and indefensible. According to a local monitoring group, more than 180 people have been killed since the February 1st coup. The EU is launching a legal action against the UK over alleged violations of the Brexit deal's protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. In a letter to London, Brussels has given formal notice of its plan to kickstart an infringement procedure of fines being imposed by the EU's top court. The 27-nation bloc is objecting to the UK's unilaterally extending a grace period beyond April 1st, applying to trade concerning Ireland. Responding, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the extension was simply a technical decision aimed at being fair. Meanwhile, the US has urged Britain and the European Union to preserve the Good Friday Accord for peace in Northern Ireland. Talking to reporters, Psaki said President Joe Biden has been unequivocal in his support for the Belfast Agreement. Bahrain has lauded Pakistan Navy's role in maintaining peace and order in the Indian Ocean region. Bahrain's Naval Forces Commander, Commodore Mohammad Yusuf Al-Assam, shared these views while meeting Pakistan's Naval Chief. Pakistan's Naval Chief Mohammad Amjad Khan Niazi is on a visit to Bahrain to discuss regional security and ways to boost cooperation. Bahrain's naval head received Admiral Niazi on his arrival and presented the Guard of Honor. Niazi held separate meetings with leaders of Bahrain Defense Forces. Pakistan Navy's media wing says the two sides discussed matters related to maritime security and defense collaborations. Admiral Niazi underscored the Navy's initiative of regional maritime security patrols to ensure peace and order in the region. At the United Nations, Pakistan has proposed a global compact for women's empowerment plan to ensure their participation in decision-making. Envoy Munir Akram virtually addressed the 65th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. The envoy proposed concrete measures to eliminate violence against women and girls. He said despite progress, women's voices continue to be silenced and their participation in public life obstructed. He called on the international community to ensure that women, who constitute half of the world's population, are never again left behind. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands took to the streets of Bolivia in protest against the arrest of former President Jeanine Áñez. She has begun a 4-month jail term over her alleged role in a coup that led to the removal of Evo Morales from power in 2019. The protesters chanted slogans in favor of Áñez and called her a brave woman. Earlier, police took Áñez into custody from her home in Trinidad and transferred her to a women's prison in the capital, La Paz. Justice Minister Ivan Lima said he would seek a 30-year jail sentence if Áñez is convicted of fomenting a coup. Her energy and justice ministers also were ordered into custody. The three face charges of terrorism, sedition, and conspiracy over the alleged coup. Icelanders are yearning for some undisturbed shut-eye after a couple of jittery weeks, literally. Tremors from tens of thousands of earthquakes have rattled their sleep in an unprecedented seismic event, which might well end in a spectacular lava show. More in this report.
Located between the Eurasian and the North American tectonic plates, Iceland frequently experiences earthquakes. The source of the past week's earthquakes is a large body of molten rock known as magma, moving roughly 1 kilometer beneath the peninsula as it tries to push its way to the surface.
So the situation in Grindavik is quite uncomfortable right now. Everyone is sleep deprived because the earth is constantly moving all day, all night. Some earthquakes are bigger than others. Some are 3.1, some are 4.2. Today we had a big one, 5.4.
Authorities in Iceland warned of an imminent volcanic eruption on the peninsula in early March, but said they did not expect it to disturb international air traffic or damage critical infrastructure nearby.
So there are some concerns about infrastructure on the Reykjanes Peninsula and what would happen if we have an eruption. Of course, the international airport is very close, but since the eruption is likely going to be very quiet and not very explosive and no huge amounts of ash, so that should not be an effect on the airport, hopefully.
More than 40,000 earthquakes have occurred since the 24th of February, exceeding the total number of earthquakes registered on the peninsula last year.
A robot manufacturer in Russia has started research and development into making robots look more like their creators. PromoBot aims to create a realistic appearance for humanoid robots using 3D modeling and hyper-realistic artificial skin. This report has more.
Robots will soon look like us thanks to the efforts of Fyodor Chergodov, a Russian sculptor, architect, designer, and 3D modeler. Chergodov says the goal is to bring the aesthetics of sculpture and art into humanoid robots. He believes that progress in the fast-growing field of robotics requires a combination of art and technology. Currently, the lab is developing a prototype of a male humanoid robot, Alexei, and mass production is scheduled to start by the end of the year.
At the moment, we are focused on Alexei's elaboration. The technologies are all identical. If we make a high-quality eye, we can use it for all our other models. Therefore, now the most important thing is to bring those developments that we have to mass production. We plan to have mass production of these technologies by the end of the year, and we want to start producing the whole body, not only the head, but also to have a full torso and legs, and to make all of this movable.
PromoBot supplies its robots to government offices and Russian universities. It has also signed new contracts with some U.S. universities. Service PromoBots work in 40 countries around the world as administrators, promoters, consultants, guides, and concierge, replacing or supplementing human employees.
At the moment, we supply robots to the government centers in Moscow, various universities, regular customers, and medical universities. There is also a large and promising market in the United States, where universities are also mostly interested, and we already signed some contracts and so on.
In 2019, the PromoBot V4 model robot became an employee of the American College of North Carolina. Developers at the company are currently working on Robo-C, as well as developing service robots of PromoBot V4 model.
Nominations for this year's Oscars have been announced in Los Angeles ahead of the virtual ceremony on 25th of April. Netflix Hollywood drama Mank is leading the nominations with 10 nods, including Best Picture. This report has more. After many delays of this pandemic year, the Oscar nominations are finally upon us. Sacha Baron Cohen, Carey Mulligan, Olivia Colman, Daniel Kaluuya, and Sir Anthony Hopkins are among the British stars nominated. They are joined by the likes of Frances McDormand, Glenn Close, Viola Davis, and the late Chadwick Boseman for Best Actor. Other Best Picture nods went to dementia drama The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, and Korean language drama Minari. British Pakistani Riz Ahmed has become the first Muslim nominated for Best Actor in a leading role for Sound of Metal. South Korean actress Yoo Jung-yeon has become the first Korean actress to get an Oscar nod, while Chinese-born director Chloe Zhao nabbed one of the 5 Best Director nods for Nomadland. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences said a record 76 nominations went to women. The event will take place at Los Angeles Union Station and the Dolby Theater next month. The form of the ceremony has not yet been announced. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific have edged higher following overnight gains on Wall Street. Investors are awaiting key central bank meetings this week, starting with the U.S. Federal Reserve. The ASX 200 in Australia is leading the gains, rising close to 1%. Seoul's Kospi and the Nikkei 225 in Japan have added more than 0.5%. Stocks in mainland China have ascended nearly 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has also edged up marginally. In football, Barcelona beat Huesca 4-1 in their Spanish Liga face-off. The win moves Barca back in second place, 4 points behind leaders Atletico Madrid. Lionel Messi's brace, along with goals from Antoine Griezmann and Oscar Mingueza, led Barca to a comfortable win. The Argentine star also equals Xavi Hernandez's all-record for most Barcelona appearances with the 767th game. Messi will break former Spain midfielder Xavi's record on Sunday if he plays against Real Sociedad. In the English Premier League, Liverpool beat Wolverhampton Wanderers 1-0 to rekindle their hopes for a top 4 finish in the league. The Reds have ascended to 6th place with 46 points, 2 behind 5th place West Ham. Diogo Jota netted the winner for the Reds, drilling a low first-time shot under Patricio to settle a tight contest. However, the match was marred by an injury to the home team's goalkeeper, Rui Patricio. Play was held up for 10 minutes after Patricio collided with teammate Conor Quaddy in the 89th minute. The club's medical staff says the goalkeeper escaped what initially looked like a serious head injury. The defeat leaves the Wolves in 13th place on 35 points from 29 matches. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.